let's go over the Module 6 assessment. And as you go through here, be looking at your work and your feedback so that you can make proper reflections, and then take notes or start typing what exactly you want to say in your reflection to earn half credit back. So this first question, notice that it says plus, that we're adding these two expressions, but we're adding 3x and negative 6x. And so a lot of misconceptions there were saying that it was -9. Again, number lines are the best way to determine if you're actually going to add the terms, the coefficients, or if you're going to subtract them. You have +3 and -6. This +3 will eat up 6 of the negatives. They cancel out, and you're left with -3x. So that was the mistake. I really liked the use of our little lines here, our V shapes that connected which terms were being combined together. So that strategy is really helpful. It's nice because it shows your thinking specifically, and it shows exactly what terms you are putting together. If you are someone who still is adding terms that are not like terms, like you added the 3x plus 2 instead 5x or just 5, you have clearly not been doing your work. And so you need to make sure you're doing your lessons when they're assigned and not try to wing it when you get to an assessment. This next one, we were looking for rewriting this expression. The way we've been working on that is using the distributive property. And if you are unfamiliar with that, you are still in that category of people who are not doing their work. You need to rewrite it without the parentheses. And to do that, we use distributive property. And there's been lots of instruction and practice on that. Again, I really liked the use of the thinking that I taught you, where you do your arrows or lines connecting which terms you're multiplying. And also boxing in or circling your final answer is also a really great strategy to use. So if you're not doing those things, start doing it. Again, oh, and then checking, working backwards or checking and showing that you checked with a check mark, also a very, very good strategy. This one we needed to work backwards and factor. We're looking to factor -15x plus 6. No one should have gotten this incorrect, because if you redistributed your answer once you chose it, you would have been able to see if you got back to -15x plus 6 or not. It shows to check your thinking. So this is where I was looking for people who, whatever they chose for their answer after they factored, to redistribute and see if it made sense. Again, lines showing what we're multiplying, and circling final answers, and using check marks to prove that we checked our work. This one, we needed to be careful. We talked about this before on the first time you took this question. This is a -1. This is not just a minus sign. It's a -1 that needs to be distributed. It's telling you to take the opposite of what is in the parentheses. -1 needs to be distributed, which means you're taking the opposite. So if they're negative inside here, they become positive when you rewrite them. You have to rewrite them after factoring in this negative. Then you can combine like terms. So mistakes were made on here because the practice was not done. And now you've got to practice and make sure that you're showing your work. You don't need to show work in your reflection, but in your reflection should explain the work that you would do and why it makes sense. Why is that the process? This one, we need a lot of just minor errors here, but I really, remember, you've got to keep the structure. Lines down your equal sign, showing each step. You should be showing on both sides every time you make a step, not just on one side. So look at the difference between these. Showing that you're adding 22 underneath the -25, it should also show here, and that's where it cancels. And then rewriting it, bringing it down. So here's a good example of saying organized, adding 22 on both sides. There should be a slash here showing that that cancels. And then this one here, multiply by 5 to undo the division, and you get negative 15. So this was just a small mistake on the multiplication part, but the process for solving and organization was totally there. Box in your final answers and then show that you've checked it, like this person did with a check mark. All of these are really good strategies for solving equations. So practice. It was obvious which kids did not do their lessons and weren't practicing these things and which ones did. So nice job on those who proved that they had the system down. Same thing with this question. Remember, when we are getting rid of a fraction that is the coefficient, we need to multiply by the reciprocal. We don't do that first. We follow SAD-MAG order. So we're going to do subtraction or addition first if we can. If there is a constant on the side with the variable term, you need to undo that constant first, then separate the variable from the coefficient. This one, you just needed to see if this answer was correct. Some people chose to substitute 11.7 in for X, added it together and realized, wait, I didn't get a negative, so that's false. Other people did actually solve it in the sketch box, and it says that, solve this equation in the sketch box, and then see what you get. When you subtract 3.2 on both sides, it should look like this, organized, showing the step, what you did on both sides, and you should be able to arrive at an answer. Some people made the mistake of getting a negative, but then also putting that it was true. Pay attention to that. This did not have a negative up here. So remember that problems are going to be there to trick you and to make you be precise. You've got to really pay attention to your work and what you're getting. This one, there was only one expression that did not represent the sale price. Some people chose a correct expression and said, well, this is the correct one because blah, blah, blah. Didn't ask for the correct one. It asked you for the one that does not represent it. So really paying attention to what the question is asking you will avoid making mistakes and losing points. In your reflections, you guys, if you're saying, oh, I accidentally picked it, but I understood it, you need to explain to me why the correct answer, which is this first one, why is that correct? Why does that make sense to you? What does this mean? What does this expression mean? And why is that not the correct way to represent it? So give those mathematics in your details. This one, there were 3 correct choices. It was the first one and the last 2. These were all ways that you could have used to find the perimeter, not the perimeter, the width of the rectangle. The perimeter is 54. You have 2 lengths, 2 widths. You knew the length, so that was just filled in. Some people chose to draw a model. I don't think there was anyone in this class, but that's helpful to draw a model, label it with what you know, but you should have looked at your equations, picked all, select all that apply for this problem, and then you could have just picked one of them to solve over here. So instead of just doing some, math this is like, there's no variables here. We should be solving an equation with a variable. So a lot of people lost points on that. The goal is, as you know, in this grade level, is to be able to use algebra, use a variable to solve real world problems. That's what we're looking for. Explain how you would have solved it in your reflection. What would you have written? How would you have solved it? What would your steps been? Things like that. And then finally, the taxi driver problem. How many miles can the passenger drive for $20? It did not say to round, and we can represent, the answer is 14 1/3. We could have put 14 1/3, and that would have accurately represented the decimal that repeats. But 14.3 I accepted. about 14. It was okay as long as I could see your work. Again, you needed to write and solve an equation using a variable, this is all what we've been practicing. So if you just started doing some math, you may have gotten the correct answer, but you still lost points for not writing and solving the equation the way we've been practicing. So I'm looking for something like this, where you write an equation that equals 20, you show your variable, you have your constant of 280 and your price per mile is $1.20. Then show your steps for solving. Organized, one step at a time, showing the math on both sides, doing, bringing down what's left, showing it on both sides. Okay, so in your reflections, you need to explain what you would have, what was the correct thing to do and why? Why does that make sense? So I should have written an equation like this, or written this equation. My first step would be to subtract 4 on both sides, bring down the 2x and the 16 on the other side, then divide both sides by 2, give those details. Using language like this makes sense to me because I was trying to find this, and this, equation helped represent that, or however you want to say it. The more details, the better. We don't do reflections twice. You have one chance to write quality reflections, turn them in, and get half credit back on your test. And you guys will have until next Friday to get your reflections done. Today is Friday, January 29th. You get 1 week to get these in. These are an additional assignment. You have your regular assignments that still go out, but this is for those who want to work to learn from their mistakes and earn some more points back. So I look forward to reading really good reflections, and I hope you guys have a great weekend.